Welcome to Spiritual Foundations for Life. It is hard to relate to people that we can't trust or count on when we need them. But we can count on God because He is eternally consistent and faithful. The psalmist says in Psalm 89, verse 2, I will declare that your love stands firm forever, that you have established your faithfulness in heaven itself. God's faithfulness is established in heaven. See, the fact that God made the world and all that is in it, and that He demonstrates His faithfulness by providing for His creatures, is really abundantly clear and illustrated in the Psalms, and especially the nature Psalms like Psalm 104, for example. And God's faithful provision for His chosen people, the people of Israel, is best seen in His plan of redemption for them, as seen in His promises and His covenants with them. The Old Testament is a record of God's faithfulness in redeeming His people. From the call of Abraham to the establishment of the Israelites in the Promised Land. The Exodus from Egypt demonstrates God's faithfulness as seen in Exodus chapter 15, verses 1 to 17. And it caused those who had been delivered to believe in God and His servant Moses, according to Exodus chapter 14, verse 31. For generations, even up to our own day today, the Jewish people have commemorated their deliverance from Egypt and the Passover. Why? In remembrance of God's faithfulness. From the time that God made a covenant with Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, His unexpected promises were slowly but progressively being fulfilled, even when they seemed to be humanly impossible, and yes, in spite of overwhelming odds. The messianic line began with Abraham's wife Sarah, who gave birth to Isaac, even though she no longer humanly could even bear children. And then, after ordering Isaac to sacrifice his son, God provided miraculously a scapegoat to take the place of Isaac, so that Abraham and Sarah's posterity, their inheritance, could be preserved even till to this day. See, God promised that the seed of the woman, Sarah's ancestors, would continue through the house of David, and that the Messiah would sit on the throne of David, because God is faithful. God promised in Psalm 89, verses 35 to 37, it says this, once for all, I have sworn by my holiness, and I will not lie to David, that his line will continue forever, and his throne endure before me like the sun. It will be established forever like the moon, the faithful witness in the sky. The first two chapters of Luke's gospel describe people who are waiting expectantly for God to fulfill His promises made under the old covenant. You can read that in Luke chapter 2, verses 25 to 38. Simeon saw the fulfillment of in the birth of Jesus and rejoiced in God's faithfulness. He said in Luke chapter 2, verses 29 to 31, Sovereign Lord, just as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all people. From the days of Abraham, many people probably thought that God was unfaithful, and so they lost their faith in Him when His word was not fulfilled in their lifetime according to their timetable. But so the Apostle Paul encouraged us in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some understand slowness. There was, however, a faithful group of people who chose to believe in God in spite of incredible hardships and persecution. And we can read about them in Hebrews chapter 11. Especially verses 39 and verse 40 talk about them. It says this, these were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what they'd been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. God has not fulfilled all of his promises yet because he's waiting to include us in his faithfulness. He's waiting for us to be blessed with the promises that he made in times past because God is faithful. Key point is that our confidence in God is rooted in his faithfulness. Our key verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 18 and 20. But as surely as God is faithful, no matter how many promises God has made, they are yes in Christ. Thank God for his faithfulness. And God bless you, and see you tomorrow for another episode of Spiritual Foundations for Life.